Your Excellency, Mr. Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya, United Nations Secretary General, Mr. Antonio Guterres, Mr. Vladimir Voronkov, thank you very much for this wonderful invitation and the opportunity to work together. Mr. Musafaki Mahamat, Mrs. Ayachevi, Mr. Dimitris Aramopoulos. Terrorism is not the spirit of religions. No God would express himself through hatred and death. Terrorism is not a strategy of politics. It is to use fear as an instrument of manipulation, division, and human degradation. Terrorism has only one ideology: violence as a means, the demoralization of society as an end. Terrorism not only attacks its victims, it wants to destroy the heart of every nation. For decades, we have received a lot of information about terrorism, and now even more when communications are faster and more accessible. But I suggest that to have a more precise analysis, we focus on the data. According to the Global Terrorism Index published by the Institute for Economics and Peace, first fact, less than 3% of terrorist attacks occurred in the OECD countries, for we can see that their effects are huge. An important aspect, let's go to the causes. IEP found an important correlation between terrorism and socioeconomic factors, such as youth unemployment levels, trust of the press and democracy, drug-related crimes, and attitudes to immigrants. According to this and other studies, in OECD countries, the only way to end terrorism from the root is to combat marginalization, inequality, and discrimination, and implement real policies of inclusion and belonging for young people. Does this mean that every migrant or young person without a job is a terrorist? Of course not. What the data tell us is that we have to eradicate the conditions that generate an enabling environment for terrorists to recruit our young people. It urges to avoid that the psychological, emotional, technological, and cultural aspects of modern societies do not isolate our people in such a way that drains them from all sense of life. Fact number 2. On the other hand, 97% of the attacks are less visible because of the frequency with which they occur, and because they are in countries where, sadly, we get used to listening or reading about death and conflict. In this, the media has a great responsibility. Indifference is the seed of terror. For example, in 2016, 75% of the deaths caused by terrorist attacks were concentrated in 5 countries. The causes. In these countries, terrorist activities are associated with instability and conflict, corruption, lack of respect for religious or human rights, the prevalence of organized crime networks, and state-perpetrated violence, among other factors. From this data, it appears that we have a main task: peace-building through national and international institutions. Is the fight against terrorism that our governments and multilateral institutions carry out every day to achieve peace sufficient? Not at all. Yes, this combat is an indispensable task. It is urgent to dismantle the terrorist groups that every day represent a threat and that they kill around 25,000 people every year. But if we want not only to fight, but to eradicate terrorism, our actions must go deeper. That is, we must also eradicate the causes that give rise to terrorism, the reasons why thousands of young people are willing to kill others. We have to build a sustainable peace. Now, what do we mean by peace? Peace is not only the absence of violence. Peace occurs where institutions do not humiliate their citizens. That is, where they are guaranteed access to goods and rights that allow them to develop their life plan, regardless of their origin, skin color, political or sexual preferences. To live in peace, in accordance to IPU findings, in a sustainable peace that lasts over time, it is essential to create and maintain certain conditions: a well-functioning government, equitable distribution of resources, free flow of information, good relations with neighbors, high level of human capital, acceptance of the rights of others, low levels of corruption, a sound business environment. Okay, but how to achieve it? What should we do? First, understanding the phenomenon from an integral perspective and attending the causes that originated. The most important task. The policies that are giving good results in OECD countries are those aimed to inclusion, a direct work with communities that have been marginalized, at the generation of educational and work opportunities. Inclusion is not only the mandate of the 2030 Development Agenda, it is a moral imperative. Second, the strengthening of governmental institutions is urgently, particularly in those countries that are in armed conflicts or that recover from them. The countries with the highest homicide rates and those countries where there are constant terrorist attacks have in common a serious institutional weakness. In this sense, as a parliamentarian, as president of the Inter-Parliamentary Union, first, it is essential to end corruption and have more efficient governments capable to respond to citizens' demands. Second, institutional redesign. We cannot continue to govern our 21st century planet with institutions that were designed 3 centuries ago. We need to change our governance models for more effective, inclusive, and more representative ones. And 3, the local sphere has a lot to say. It is necessary to remake the social fabric from our communities. Here, not only parliamentarians play a crucial role as popular representatives, but also majors. Third, the response to terrorism cannot be made with the same weapons or rules as the terrorists. Restricting liberties, hurting democracy, generating authoritarian governments is not the answer. The voice of terrorism is that of fear. It cannot be the state that echoes and instills more fear in the population. The answer is in a more democratic and more inclusive model, in governments deeply committed to human rights and policies to promote respect and tolerance, in governments that promote political participations, that citizens know they are part of their collective destiny through the implementation of mechanisms of deliberative democracy. Fourth, promotion, respect, and defense of human rights. There is no trade-off between human rights and security. It is a false premise commonly used by authoritarian regimes. Countries where respect for human rights, and in particular religious rights, are promoted and more open, tolerant, and peaceful communities. And extremism is not fought from the other extreme. In fact, one end is fed with the mere existence of the other. A true fight against the causes of terrorism is made from tolerance, respect, love for humanity, regardless to our differences. But this must be promoted with educational policies that show our children the different faces of humanity. Like Octavio Paz said, "I am not, there is no me, it is always us." 5, in addition to having a direct responsibility in this task, specifically, the more than 46,000 parliamentarians from all over the planet have duties and clear commitments in which we are working to prevent and combat terrorism. We are working coordinated with United Nations. The Inter-Parliamentary Union already signed a Memorandum of Understanding with United Nations, and we are fully committed to work into this route. B, legislation. In this way, we have short-term and long-term legislation. When it goes to short-term, it is essential to generate better regulatory frameworks in matters that are clearly linked to crime and terrorism. Money laundering, human trafficking, migration, human rights, legislation and policies to protect victims, mostly women and children, among others. But also we have a long-term responsibility in institutional design, new institutions for the new challenges. C, budgeting. Understanding inclusion as a mandate. Budget allocation is the most important public policy instrument in a country. Inclusion must be its priority. The oversight. The devil is in the details. A work of better implementation of our international commitments and national responsibility is necessary. It is necessary that this oversight also reviews the full validity of human rights and freedom. E, representation. The social ties are more necessary than ever. That's where we learn our values and grow. That's where we understand the value of the community. Through the Inter-Parliamentary Union, here we are legislators from 179 countries with strong political will. We are working committed to the construction of a planet in peace, a safe, just, democratic, tolerant planet.